Hey, welcome to episode number 195 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We are recording on February the 12th, 2023. My name is Eric, host of the show, based in Southern Ontario, target shooter, ham radio operator, computer geek, and started a small preparedness company to help people better prepare for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
I'm Alan. I'm a safety trainer, first responder, security expert, overall safety nerd, and definitely not Ian.
Are you sure?
You'll never know.
I'm Scott, a first responder from Ontario. I like learning things and I worry about our fragile infrastructure.
And I'm Jeff. I am based in Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, ham radio operator, general overall handyman, and weather nerd.
My name's Jer. I'm a tactical beard owner, beast t-shirt guru, and a government critique.
And what happened to the beard there, bud?
Yeah, are you sure you're still a tactical beard owner?
Yeah, really.
All I'm going to say is I did not partake willingly in this scenario, but yes, it got trimmed a little while ago, and apparently just like, it was kind of square and like whatever, just rounded off meant that about 3.5 inches got cut off. So when it was all done, I went to the bathroom. I was like, I don't fucking like this. And someone came to our house, right? I was like, well, this went horribly fucking wrong. And I'm like, I'm not going to kill someone in my house. So we just left it at that. But apparently it's going to grow better now. So we've got about 2 months for that to happen.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And if you want to help support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air, you can buy some swag. We have both the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt, tonight being shown off by Jeff, and the Tactical Velcro patch, tonight being shown off by Scott, both available at www.prepperpodcast.ca. All proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
And if you're enjoying the show and you like Pierre's beard, please take a few minutes and like us on Facebook and submit a review on iTunes. We also want your feedback, good, bad, or what you think of his beard, or if there's a topic you want us to cover. You can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
All right, we've got some transmittable content for you in this episode. We're going to start off with some recent news articles. I will update you on our personal preps, and then we're going to get into the main topic. We're talking about NVIS and nerding out on ham radio tonight. Let's move into the news.
I had a bunch of ideas of things we could talk about, but then everybody else already put them in. So something, UFOs, Russia, China, Ukraine, we're all doomed.
Yeah, the news has kind of been completely bombarded by the whole UFO thing going on. We did solve that earlier today in our little Prepper Podcast chat group. We have found out that it was actually Scott who was, testing out some of his most recent plans and such, and for his gasifiers.
I said I'm sorry. The hydrogen mix was just a little rich in the gasifier, that's all.
Yeah, when the gasifier decided to take off, it turned into a UFO that was then shot down by NATO.
Yeah.
Scott, by the way, has just changed his last name to Hindenburg.
These things happen.
Yeah.
Fair enough, I suppose.
So I've got a couple non-UFO ones. So I'm sure everybody's already heard by now, or at least you should have, the massive earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria. There's over 33,000 dead. A bit on the bright side, it's 6.5 days since the earthquake happened, and they're still pulling live people out of the rubble. So wow. I just kind of wanted to make a mention of that, to say to people that, if your power's out for 6 hours, the world's not ending. You don't need to panic. You don't need to call 911. You don't need to, get first responders out there because your power is not on. These people have survived for 6 days, probably half crushed in rubble with no food, no water. You can survive for a day or two without hydro. So, as always, be prepared. You can't prepare for an earthquake. If it's going to happen and your building's going to fall on you, good luck. But
power outages you certainly can be ready for.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other one I wanted to touch on, and and I'm gonna come maybe put my tinfoil hat on a little bit. But
Wait a minute. On a prepper podcast, tinfoil
yeah,
hats.
I know.
You should come with it on already. Come on now.
Yeah. There was a very large train derailment in Palestine, Ohio, involving a whole bunch of hazardous and dangerous chemicals. There's not been a lot of information that's come out of it. I mean, there was a lot of bad chemicals, vinyl chloride being one of them that was involved in this, but people are saying it's kind of the epicenter. It would be of a chemical warfare bomb. It was that bad. And it's just not getting the media attention. It's not getting, their reports are popping out now of fish dying miles downstream, and they're finding all kinds of farm animals in the area that have died and whatever. So apparently the EPA or whoever the environmental people are is saying it's fine for people to go home, and there's a lot of people that aren't going home. The other reason I wanted to bring that up was just to kind of go back probably a year or so ago. One of our other panelists, Hughes, had a bit of a wildfire, I guess, or brush fire near his house, and they had 10 minutes to get out. Well, this was kind of the same thing. This train derails, you got to knock on your door, you got 5 minutes to get out. So, again, I know we've never said it before, that you should be prepared and you should test your stuff. And you should be ready to go when something happens. So I just want to be the
first time we've said that. Yeah, 195 episodes. That's the first time we've ever mentioned that, I think.
Yep.
We
I just
just
want to
Stuff
be
and
the
know how
first.
to use it.
There should be a podcast about that, like getting ready for
There
stuff
should
to
be, yeah.
happen.
Yeah, or you would think that within 195 episodes we may have mentioned, get your stuff together and know how to use it. But took us a while to get there, I guess.
Yeah.
Listen, we had to build up to something here.
This is true.
Thanks for the support up until now, everyone.
We finally made it. Yeah.
Now that we have your attention, I'd like to talk to you about Amway.
I've been trying to reach you about your insurance expired or extended insurance policy.
Your extended warranty for your car.
Warranty, not insurance. Yes, warranty.
Oh boy. All right, shall we move into what we've done lately for preps?
Absolutely. So I've been away for a couple of weeks, so it gives me lots to do. So I'm going to take the Ian role here. Cracked out the ham radio, played with some equipment, and did some NVIS testing with Eric's help. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It's quite a lot of fun. I very much enjoyed doing it. Again, sort of test your equipment. It's great that it's here, but if I haven't figured out how to set it up, how to use it efficiently, how to use it in a crisis, well, that's probably not as valuable. For our test your gear idea, I decided to keep my wood stove going for about 2 weeks solid. So I was firing logs in every couple hours, keeping it cranked during the day. And then at night, I would pack it in just as tight as I could, set it on low. And in the morning, it was usually still a hot ember bed, and I could just put more wood in and it would eventually light itself. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Nice.
Played around with a vacuum sealer with one of my good mag buddies. I'm just looking at a way of securing long-term items so that they're just perfectly airtight, waterproof. And you can sort of pack them away. And if they're in camping gear or whatever, they're not going to, at least you don't have to worry about the water aspect or air exposure or whatever. So that was a lot of fun. And then I was out having dinner and ended up sort of sitting next to someone I didn't know, and somehow freeze-dried food came up, and we just ended up having a great conversation about all the kinds of things that we think about, just in terms of shaking off that continuity bias about there's always going to be food at the grocery store and power from the wall and so on and so forth. So
Water out of your tap.
Yep. Quite enjoyed that. So it's been a productive couple of weeks.
Yeah, those random conversations are always fun.
Absolutely.
You never really know where they're going to go.
And sometimes it's the person who you would think would be the absolute last one that would be a prepper turns out to be as hardcore as ever.
So
it's true.
For context there, up until when my wife and I were kind of first dating, she thought it was ridiculous that I owned guns and thought it was completely unnecessary. And then last week, she asked if I could teach her how to shoot them. So that's where we've gone in this world. People do come around.
Sometimes it takes time, but
I didn't do a lot for preps this week. I just did a bit of food prep. I'm still doing a bit of toying around with my canner. I'm hopefully, if there's enough people, that a lady that I know is going to hold a canning class this week for a couple hours. So I'm going to pop over there and get my feet wet and start working on the canning. And
probably
I just
shouldn't put your feet in the canner, Jeff.
Oh man, why not? Come on.
Sorry, I had to.
Feet get pickled, not canned.
And I did some field rotation. That's about it.
All right. So for myself, like Scott said, did the NVIS testing with him the one day. It was fun to get kind of things set up. We were always trying to see if we could make contact on the radio between our two locations. So that was a fun little test to get sorted out. And then on February the 5th, the London Ham Radio Club was actually sponsoring an NVIS test. So they had a net controller who was calling for contacts and just logging whoever they could on NVIS. They're asking for certain parameters, like what type of rig you're operating, what type of power, what type of antenna. And then, of course, call sign just for requirements of identification. And we'll get into a little bit more on that a little bit further into the episode here. But that was a lot of fun to test out and play around with.
Like Jeff, I've been a little lax. I'm kind of up to my eyeballs in school, work, training, all kinds of great things. I did finish one of my 2 professional designations that I'm trying for this year. So I now have another set of letters after my name, which is good that it's done for a few years, I guess. Other than that, it's been not a lot. I did do some fuel rotation, mostly because I forgot to go to the gas station. But that's why we have a reserve of fuel. Mm-hmm. Oh, I did repair my shed that stores that fuel. We had a windstorm back before Christmas. It did some damage, so I finally got around to fixing it yesterday because it was a beautiful day.
Nice.
Didn't do too much practical, a little bit more running around, but we got some supplies stocked up. Our daughter's gotten to that age where half the clothes doesn't fit, but the other clothes is too big. So we've had like a mishmash of a bunch of clothes that doesn't really fit her. So got a lot of clothes sorted out. So organize her room, get her a little more comfy so we can get some other stuff done. Got to spend a whole day with Mel. Daughter was gone on the weekend, so we got to just go around to a few stores. Found some really good prepping supplies and just stock up stuff that we were like, hey, that's a smoking deal. Let's pick it up for the preps, as well as just nice to hang out. And we got the venue paid for the wedding this year, so that was a nice big thing that we were very ecstatic about. And then I got part 1 of 2 completed for the gun club that I finally got into. So very ecstatic about that. Yeah.
It's always fun to hop through those hoops.
Yeah, I was hoping to get to the one that's a little bit closer because it's a little bit cheaper. It's still a nice facility, don't get me wrong, but like just the yearly cost is lower. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that one's only like 20 minutes. This one's 40 minutes. This one I'm going to is about double the price, but it's still a decent price for an Ontario range, but like very nice facilities, goes out to 200 yards. They've got 9 ranges on top of a bunch of other ranges, which nobody's allowed. Like he has specific ranges for law enforcement, military training and everything. So it's not like they're booking up, the ranges that you pay to hopefully use. Like he's got a complete separate. So yeah, no, fantastic reviews. And I know a few people that have gone there or whatever, but yeah, I mean, I tried to get into the one close to us, but there's a guy that lives in town. He's been trying for I think this is the first time he finally got in, and he's been trying for 6 years. So I was like, all right, I'll dabble into the other one, and it worked out. A few people backed out, and they were like, hey, this is what it is. You got 2 days, so yeah, it worked out. So yeah, we're ecstatic. Finally get some more trigger time without having to make a whole bunch of other arrangements.
Yep.
So
very nice.
That does make it better. I should mention we did try and fill the freezer a little bit. My wife was over in the U.S. Over the weekend. Couldn't bring chicken back over the border because of the avian flu. So even though they were dead and frozen, apparently that's still a thing. So that was $70 well wasted and worth of chicken.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does.
Can you still?
I eat a lot of chicken.
Yeah.
Just eating raw chicken at the border. This is not going away. So I'll deal with the 2 days of sickness.
There's got to be a barbecue somewhere.
Well, there was in the back of my truck. She just not in the. She was over there with her dad, and didn't have it, which is weird because he's the one that usually has like the Weber grill strapped to the back of his like 1993 Tracker, but not this time apparently. So yeah, that was I found that out the hard way today. The government does not want us bringing chicken across the border.
But so if the chicken had it and it's been processed and frozen, like does it still have it after the unthaw process?
Don't ask questions,
what it is?
Pierre. You have been told. You have been told, sir.
Yep.
I'm just trying to critique a little bit here.
Chicken, garbage can.
Stop. No, it doesn't even go in the garbage can. It goes in a freezer. Which is what else makes you think it's absolutely ridiculous.
So I guess the unthaw part kind of makes sense from that.
Yeah, but I'm gonna thaw it and cook it. Like,
yeah, but
I still don't understand how a respiratory virus can be transmitted through muscle tissue. But I'm no epidemiologist, so who knows?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can probably be one nowadays.
I might need to visit tomorrow. Might need to visit tomorrow.
And I'm not saying it's nothing new, but I mean, and I can remember years ago, I went with my parents, we took a trailer and went to Florida, and Mom bought a bunch of oranges from Florida, and it said right on it, like imported from Florida, or product of Florida, whatever, put it in the trailer. We got to the border, they seized it. They're like, nope, you cannot bring that across the border. We're like, it came from Florida to Canada. We're just taking it back. And they're like, nope, can't have it. They took it, threw it in the garbage.
And then you went to the grocery store and picked up
bought the same oranges
imported from Florida.
Yep.
I'm seeing a trend here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Prepping for a barbecue at the border.
and screwdrivers.
Yep. So we got a comment in the live chat here from Brittany, just talking about another balloon or whatever shot down near Tobermory today. Makes me think about Bruce Power and how close. So figure we'll talk about the whole balloon thing for a second here, get everybody's kind of thought on it before we move into NVIS, because I know everybody probably wants to chat about that because that's kind of a thing right now.
My first question is, how many times does this happen and it doesn't get reported?
Yes,
that's my first question. Because is this just a slow news cycle and this is totally normal?
Yeah, could be. Or what are they trying to divert us from?
The Epstein list? I don't know.
Could be. Yeah.
That was my first thought.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. They launch high altitude weather balloons all the time.
All the damn time.
Yeah. So there are probably going to be any given day dozens, if not hundreds, of balloons float around. That's how they measure what's going on with the jet stream, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if the one supposed spy balloon has kind of made all the other balloons in trouble, and we're just shooting down weather balloons now. I think it'll be interesting. Well, if we're just getting a little trigger happy at any balloon, and we're shooting down things that have always been there and aren't a problem and aren't spy balloons.
Balloon lives matter, guys. Let's be real. It's gonna come full circle.
Here we go.
Careful going to a kid's birthday party if you're getting trigger happy around balloons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just that
wasn't this
Helium Cartel is in on it? That's all.
Wasn't this the plot of what was the Clint Eastwood movie, Clear and Present Danger? No, In the Line of Fire, when he was the Secret Service agent and there was the plot to assassinate the president, and they just kept popping balloons instead of and making it sound like gunshots.
No, I think that's it. Yeah,
I think that was a movie. I think that was In the Line of Fire.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw that, like, we're popping. Balloons are dangerous now. That's what I thought of.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely something to kind of keep your eye on and pay attention to. But I don't know if it's really worth freaking out about right now. Like a lot of people are kind of going one way or the other.
And
everybody's saying
obviously, I
they're
mean, listening to the mainstream media isn't going to help you at all because,
Mhm.
I mean, our Canadian, I don't even know Anita, and I can't remember what her position is, but she came out the first one that got shot down and kind of described it. Said, "Oh, it was cylinder shaped. It was this. It was that. Whatever." Next time she came out, we just got rid of it. I think she got told you don't
don't
talk
say-
about
no
yeah.
you
details.
don't say anything about what it is.
Yeah, just that it was shot
Yeah,
down.
and I mean, and I can understand.
And now
the
now their
concept
new
of-
word is the one today that Brittany mentioned over Tobermory. They said it was quote decommissioned. That was that was the government's official quote. We decommissioned it.
Decommissioned it. That's
I'm
friendly.
gonna use that next time I get asked what happened to the pizza. I decommissioned it.
Decommission the pizza. Oh, geez. No, but yeah, I know a lot of people are kind of going a little squirrely about it and getting all freaked out. Like I said, I think it's worthwhile paying attention to, but I don't think it's really something to be getting all squirrely about quite yet.
I mean, yeah, it's something to keep an eye on, but I mean, you also got to think about if the only place you're going to find information on what was shot down is from mainstream media.
Yeah.
You know, I've got more questions than answers that they're going to give me. So, I mean, it's something to keep on the back burner and potentially keep some useful tools easily handy around. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there just been, did they just deploy new cameras or radar that can see just a little bit better? And, weather balloons being out, like there's so many questions that I'm just like, I'm going to give it like a month or two, and then hopefully we get something sort of reliable to the real information, because everything right now there's just too much that I'm like, I need more information. I need information from a reliable source, sort of that nothing's
Turn on
coming
the
right
CBC, Pierre.
Yep.
I think this is going to be like the clown fiasco of, what was that, 2017 or 2018, where people are just like, it's something to focus on that's not the rest of our world for a few minutes, and then it's just going to go away because it's actually something that's totally normal.
Well, I was hoping we
Could be.
could beat them with a hammer like the clowns back then.
Well, I'm not saying you
Was there a
can't beat the balloons with a hammer. I'm also not saying they might not.
Oh, I
enjoy
wasn't
it,
talking
but
about the balloons. I was talking about who's telling me about the balloons.
Jeez.
for legal purposes, that's a
No.
joke.
Probably a terrible idea to beat anything with a hammer except a nail.
Or a screw if your drill died.
Oh, I guess if your drill is broken, yeah. But
yeah.
Ultimately, if it's something that's concerning
Yeah.
you, maybe step up your preps a touch, add a few extra cans to the shopping cart, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's really worth losing our minds over quite yet. But keeping an eye on it absolutely is.
Oh, yeah,
something that
absolutely.
should
Make sure you
happen.
keep up your can-to-can opener ratio.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. How could I have forgotten about that advice? Yes.
Tell
Make sure
that
that
Make
you
sure
can
your
to can
batteries
opener
in your
ratio.
seal
Yes.
detector are charged.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
You had to go there, Jeff.
I did.
All of a sudden, next week,
Nope.
so before next week, you should buy stocks in 9-volt batteries and can openers. You might
Yes.
see a little bit of growth potential. It'll be a quick throw $100 in, you get 150 back out next week. Quick turnaround cash. Why not?
Reinvest it in more can openers. Yep. It's good. Awesome. Well, I just wanted to kind of get that out because I know a lot of listeners are probably wondering on our take on what's going on with that, because it's kind of the buzz thing going on right now. But with that, how about we move into the main topic this evening that has nothing to do with random UFOs or floaty balloons. We're going to be talking about NVIS tonight. So I get to geek out on ham radio, which is
Good,
one of my
'cause I
favorite
have
things
so
to
many
do.
questions.
Do I have an episode for you?
Yeah, that's
Hey, Eric.
95. Yeah.
Hopefully this one
What's-
doesn't do it.
What's NVIS? I'd love to know.
Oh, look at you go. So NVIS, Near Vertical Incidence Sky-wave. So even the term is nerdy as heck, but that's okay.
I know all of those words. I've never heard them together. Tell me more.
Well, there you go. So the easy part about this is, or the easy explanation of this is simply getting your frequency or your transmission bounces off the ground. It bounces straight up into the air, into the ionosphere, and then basically comes right back down at a slight angle. It uses HF, so it is an amateur radio licensed thing, so it's not something you're going to be doing without license. Yes, we've talked about this before, where people will say, "Oh, I'll just do it when shit hits the fan. I don't need a license. The government's watching me if I'm licensed." You can you take that if you want to take that route, go for it. That's you're not going to be able to test or know how to use your stuff.
They say that from their
Unless you're licensed.
smartphones.
Yes, exactly. Which may or may not work in an emergency situation. This should, as long as you've got power and a radio, which you may or may not. But
no, I meant more like the constant spying of the government through our phones.
oh, right. Yes, I see what you mean. Yes,
Yes.
yeah. You don't want to get your ham radio license. I don't want to be on a list, and yet you've got a cell phone and a driver's license and a health card, and
And
so
TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah, the tickety talk is sending the balloons in the air. But
Yeah.
so with this mode's really actually works quite well. It's a pretty common question with radio communications, especially in the preparedness world, where people say, I want to be able to talk to a family member, but they're the next town over, or they're a couple of towns over. They're not within eyesight anymore. I can't get like a 2 meter 70 centimeter antenna up high enough to be within that sight line to communicate with them. I want to be able to talk to them, though, if something happens. This mode is probably the mode for you. Again, what it does, like I said, it bounces the signal straight up the ionosphere and straight back down. Same kind of idea for your HF communication, which allows worldwide communication, except with the worldwide, it bounces up, it comes back down on a much larger angle, and then obviously transmits worldwide. So this will do your closer range stuff. So, for example, I've run tests, like I mentioned, in what we've done lately for preps. I did a test with Scott not long ago, and distance between two of us is about 200 kilometers. And we were able to communicate without issue. If we were to set our antennas up for regular HF use, chances are we would not hear each other. So setting up your antennas is actually quite easy. That's the other nice part about this setup, is it doesn't have to be difficult to do. It doesn't have to be 30, 40, 50 feet up in the air in order to get your antenna set up. It's literally 10 feet off the ground. Easy, simple to do. Wire antenna as well. You can get other fancier setups if you want. You can go all kinds of crazy setup if you want. My experience with this has simply been a wire antenna, either an end fed, which is literally a wire in a box, and then the wire extends from that box as far out as you need, depending on the band that you're operating on. Or you can do a dipole, which is feed the antenna in the center, and then you've got your wire shooting off one way and the opposite in the other direction. Again, 10 feet off the ground, nice and easy to set up. It can be incredibly portable. Again, my setup with the end-fed antenna, I use that when I go out to parks and do parks on the air activations. It literally just winds up and I can carry it in the truck very easily. And it takes nothing to deploy. So you do your 10 feet in the air. You can do, there's going to be arguments about what the precise height is. Some say 10, some say 15, some say 13. It's going to be a little bit of testing on your part. I found that 10 works quite well, and you're able to get that communication out.
So is it 10 from like end to end, 10 feet at the one end, 10 feet at the other end, or can you go up and down a little bit at each end, or do you want
I try to keep it
as vertical as possible?
Yeah, I keep mine at 10 feet, and I keep it as horizontal to the ground as I possibly can. If you're off a little bit, it's not going to be the end of the world. But like I said, I keep mine at 10. This is where it kind of gets fun, where you're going to have to test a little bit to figure out exactly what works in your setup. Like I said, for me, I've had really good luck with 10. Other people do 15, some do 5. So you're going to have to kind of play around with that. And there's mathematical calculations that you can search out on the internet as well to find that'll calculate out exactly how high you need it to be in order, depending on the frequency that you're using. But I found I found that 40 meters and 20 meters work best. And I found that doing the 10 feet off the ground seems to work quite well. So in my testing, like I said, I've been able to get a hold of Scott without issue. Nice, clear signal. We could understand each other. We could talk, no problem. That was right here from the house. That was a little bit of a different setup, and I'll let Scott kind of chime in about his setup. With that test, I was actually using my antenna here that I have permanently set up in the backyard, and it's about 30 feet up. So it still worked, and we could get a hold of Scott, no problem. So that's where kind of testing stuff out helps. I'm sure if I drop mine down to the 10-foot level, I would probably hear him a lot clearer than I was. But it still did work without issue, which was kind of neat to see because I haven't tested it before at that kind of height. So it was a neat little experiment to see that I could still hear him, he could still hear me, even though my my antenna was up at the 30 feet, and that's my my off-center fed dipole that's up that high. And I hadn't used it before for NVIS, but it worked quite well. So I was quite pleased with that. I don't know, Scott, if you want to talk about your setup when we were doing the test.
So
Quick question
I'm
first.
just going to dial it back and compare NVIS to a normal setup.
Mhm.
So that normal setup, it's going out at more of an angle. You picture the cartoon with a little radio tower and the radio waves bouncing around the globe, and you sort of get that M shape you're drawing. And you end up with sort of this dead zone semi close to you where you broadcast out, it bounces off the ionosphere and comes down 1,000 kilometers away. So if you're in that 200 to 800 kilometer range, you're not hearing it because all the radio waves are above you there. So by changing the way the antenna is set up so that it's more of that vertical, instead of sort of being a long M wave going up and down, it's sort of a much tighter, like it looks like it's a higher frequency just because the angle's tighter. So all of a sudden you're able to hear things a whole lot closer to you. And I mean, this is the exact reason I got into ham radio as a prepper, is the ability to talk one town over, or sort of for things I need. It's great if I can hear Australia and pick up the BBC shortwave broadcasts, but if there's something I'm interested in, it's because, you know, practically I need to talk to Eric because I know he has some supplies that, or advice or whatever.
That's if Jeff hasn't stolen them yet.
That is true, but at least then I'll know Eric had it, and now it's at Jeff's house.
This is true.
So what I had set up was a very long end-fed antenna. It's about 120 feet. I've got sort of lots of yard. My height was very precisely set at about whatever the tree limb that I threw a rope over and sort of hung it from.
That's incredibly precise.
Yes, there's a little bit of a slope to my yard. So, you know, just picking a tree at the far end, pulling a lot of tension on it. But even with a lot of tension, my sort of the 18 gauge wire that my long antenna is going to have a dip in it. It's just not possible to have it tight enough to, you know, you look at power lines, they have to have that dip in them. And I didn't have any problems. When we start talking about the London test, I stayed on the air listening to that for, you know, probably a good hour before the band started fading. And it was just wonderful listening to people checking in from all different locations around Ontario, a couple from the States, but just sort of fascinating being able to hear these. So, you know, like there's someone in, you know, in the town where my folks are. I'm like, oh, perfect. That's good to know that this system works. So looking at it very much from that ARES, amateur radio emergency service perspective, you know, this is a communication system that we can set up and use effectively, that's independent of most other infrastructure, right? Sort of especially if you have a little portable setup, you know, Eric's Pelican box going to the park, you know, that's all you need at each end to talk, which is the exact kind of technology that I love. So I think this is such a perfect prepper application of this technology.
Yeah, and even to mention that, I didn't get into really the requirements equipment wise that you need to do this, and like you said, Scott, it's fairly basic. You need a radio that's capable of transmitting on HF frequency. You need some sort of power source for that radio. So whether it be plugged into a power source in your house that's plugged into the wall, or you can run these on batteries most of the time as well. Obviously a microphone to talk on, and an antenna. and then some coax to connect the radio to the antenna. So it can be as fancy and as intricate as you want, or as mobile and compact as you want. It's really nice that way. And like I said, it's as simple as just throwing a wire 10 feet in the air. You also made a good point there, Scott, about trying to get the wire as tight as you could to keep it straight. That's not a big deal with doing the dipole or end-fed antennas. There can be a sag to it. It's not going to cause any huge problems. Of course, if you really want to check your setup and do like an SWR test and all that, finicking around with the antenna is going to make a little bit of a difference, but having a bit of a sag in it's not going to be a big deal, especially when you're getting into things, like a couple 100-meter long wire antennas. They're going to sag. It's just you're never going to hold them fully straight out, and it's not going to hurt anything to have them sag. If anything, it's going to take a little bit of the pull off of them, so they're not going to get all stretched out. So it's I did spend some time when I first got into this trying to get things perfectly straight, and it doesn't need to get to that level. So no problem with a little sag in it. And it's, like we said, it's as simple as just a radio, a power source, and an antenna. And you can do this as well. And that'll allow you to do worldwide communication if you get the antenna way up in the air. But doing the NVIS is really, really simple. See, Patrick in the live chat's got a good question. Does it matter if the antenna, so either end-fed or dipole, is right next to your house? My normal 80-meter sky loop is about 20 feet up, so above my bungalow, but the NVIS would be below the height of the building. Yeah, I keep mine tucked right in by the house when I did some tests. And we did some tests on this too in the summer with Kevin from Spark. And he's in Alliston, so he's about 80 kilometers away from me. And we were tucked right in by the house, and no problems at all. We were able to communicate with him as well. So it shouldn't be an issue. You're obviously going to want to keep that antenna away from metal objects, that sort of thing that can throw it off or radiate the RF as well. But having it tucked in, you're going to be 10 feet, right? So of course you're going to be below the roof line. So it should be no problem at all to have it in close by the house. Just keep it away from metal stuff so it doesn't interfere with it.
Any possibility of doing this in a mobile setup?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't see why not.
So would I need to pull over and stop my car and then transmit, or would it just?
So that's the fun part. You would be exempt under the Highway Traffic Act in Ontario as a ham radio operator to operate your radio while you are operating your vehicle. Would I suggest doing that? No. Because you're going to be paying a heck of a lot more attention to your radio than you are to what's going on the road.
No, I meant in terms of actual transmission. Yeah. Legalities aside,
just had to get that disclaimer in there.
Yeah,
but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. A lot of the time when I go and do parks on the air, we're in the truck if it's adverse weather and still transmitting. As far as antennas go, I haven't tested it with any kind of a permanent installed vertical antenna in a vehicle. I've only ever done it with wire antennas. So I'll take my end-fed and stick it in the snowbank in the wintertime or just in the ground if there's no snow and ice. So I don't know about vertical antennas, like permanent installs on vehicles. If you're going to go HF that way, you certainly can do it. You can install an HF radio in a vehicle. It's low at that point, so I don't see why it wouldn't work. But you're not going to be installing a big wire antenna in a vehicle, so that one I'm not quite sure. You know what? We're going to have to test that.
I was just about to say, I was like that. Tune in next week for those weeks, perhaps.
Now I have an excuse to go buy another antenna.
I've got my TYT in my truck that I got from Rapid Survival, and it can transmit on the HF bands, right?
No, that does 2 meter and 70 centimeter. It doesn't do HF.
Do HF.
So you're not doing HF on that, unfortunately. But yeah, now I have a reason to go buy an HF antenna for the truck and test this out.
But it'll transmit on 10 meter, right? I guess that's still not high enough.
No, I don't think it does 10 meter. I'd have to double check. I've only ever used.
I happen to be on their website right now. It says 10 meter, 6 meter, 2 meter, and 70 centimeter.
Well, there you go. Interesting.
So I could do it off 10 meter because that would.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
But it almost so this would be a dumb question then, or actually maybe not a dumb question, considering that you have a pickup truck, Eric. Would you be able to run it the 8-foot length of the bed across, and would that maybe work?
Like the wire antenna?
Yeah.
Possibly. I don't think it's long enough. It would have to be a bit longer for either
Okay.
20 or 40. But again, it just has to be a harmonic of the frequency you want to transmit on, right? So I have to measure the bed and do some calculations on that. But that's the fun part with all this, is kind of testing stuff out to see if it'll work or if it will antenna or not. That's always the question: will it antenna?
So
I
is
think
one
we're
of the
testing
big
some stuff out,
reasons.
Jeff. Yeah, go ahead.
So is one of the big reasons about testing this, like, is there anything that you need to keep track of, certain heights or whatever? So Eric and Scott, you guys were chit chatting. You guys tested this. Like, is there anything that you need to keep consistent to keep that good communication? Like, let's say Eric puts his antenna, 2 feet higher. Does it go outside of that? Like, is that what you guys are testing, or just to make sure that it works? Like, is there, like specific things that you guys are testing? Because it's like, if you put your antenna too high, too low, because you're bouncing it back at an angle, right? Would that angle go surpass that area that you're trying to reach? Is that a big reason for testing?
Yeah, that, and just we wanted to prove we could do it. Because like Scott said,
Okay.
that was kind of his big reason to getting in the ham radio in the first place, was the more local-ish communication versus line of sight communications. We wanted to prove that it could actually be done. And then we wanted to just play around and see how far we could get and who we could talk to. That's why we hopped into the net that the London club did there on the 5th. But yeah, playing around with the heights could certainly, if you hit a certain point, and we should probably test this one day and just kind of increment up the antenna until we get to a point where we can't hear each other anymore, and then we would know. We wanted something. We wanted to just establish that, okay, if we're both at this setup, can we talk to each other? And now we know that we can. So if something were to happen and we want to talk to each other now, we know that if I set mine up this way, Scott sets his up this way, we should, in theory, be able to communicate. Now you get into the whole fun game of propagation and sunspots and all that kind of fun stuff that on some given day might prevent you from communicating, even if you have the most perfect setup in the world ready to go for NVIS. But we know on that day, at least, it worked. So it's a lot of testing and a lot of playing around with certain variables, which is fun at times and frustrating at others.
And it was very interesting listening to the London test over the course of a couple of hours, because the band that they were working on started fading. So initially they were having really clear communications on the exact frequency they were working on, but later on it was dropping off and they weren't able to pick each other up. So we had changed frequencies to try a different part of the spectrum. And it's really interesting when you read about NVIS, and you're kind of trying to thread the needle a little bit, where if your frequency is too high, it's going to shoot straight through the ionosphere, just out into space. So it has to be low enough that it's going to bounce off. But if it's too low, then it bounces off the lower parts of the atmosphere and doesn't get anywhere. So having the exact perfect setup today doesn't necessarily make it the perfect setup for tomorrow, because there's factors that you can't see, smell, or taste that are changing in the background. So yeah, whether it's understanding the art of the science and being able to finesse it a little bit, like, because we're trying and we were just texting back and forth on our phones, and Eric's like, okay, let's go to this frequency, see if it's any better. I'm like, oh wow, perfect, it worked. So the whole point of testing when we have phones is to be able to do that.
Why not take advantage of that convenience while we can, right?
So it's a whole lot easier to run this test where we can text back and forth and just control variables, rather than just be wandering around a little waterfall spectrum analyzer trying to guess, like, I wonder if that little spike is someone I want to talk to.
Yeah, and I mean, if there's a specific, collapse event that you need to bust out all your preps or whatever, the last thing you want to do is start worrying about all this stuff. If you've got 15 different things you can try on your normal setup, and you sit down and calm down and, okay, try this frequency and this frequency, probably better than like trying to start this from fresh when you've already got the whole stress of no power, no food, nothing at the stores, nothing so Yeah, it's just got me very intrigued. Like the whole ham radio things. I've got so many questions and I don't understand it. And I'm like, because I have questions, it's like I should probably do the course, like just cause. But
It's
not right now.
almost
But
almost
yeah,
what the course is designed for.
Weird.
yeah.
So weird how that
I,
goes.
I don't know. I don't know.
Hey,
I probably
uh,
have more questions after it.
Eric
But
and Scott, what are you guys using for your HF rig for your radio?
I go first, Scott.
So I have a Yaesu FT991A. So it actually does all 3 bands, which was what I found attractive. I have that set up on my dining room table and a 50-foot coax, like 50 ohm coax out to like 120 some odd foot, like probably a full 40-meter wavelength, end-fed wire antenna that basically I just strung a rope up at one end to anchor it and walk through the snow. A big trucker's hitch on the rope on the other end to put a bit of tension on it. And yeah, I thought it worked really quite nicely. Like I was really pleased with how it ran.
Cool.
Yeah, for myself. So the test that when me and Scott were doing our tests there, I was running my base station here, actually where I run the podcast from, sitting right here in front of me. It's a Kenwood TS590, so it's a 100-watt rig. Then that's pumped through a off center fed dipole. It's a 270-foot long dipole, so it does all the bands. That's why I got it. I got the room to put it out, so I did. And I was running 100 watts when we were doing that. And it's about 30 feet up. So that was kind of part of my test with Scott. I was kind of curious if this antenna would do it as well. And obviously it did, because it worked out quite well. In other tests that we did in the summer, I was using my off-center fed dipole. So it's about 100-ish feet roughly, give or take, maybe a bit less. And it was 10 feet off the ground. So both have worked quite well. And we were operating on 40 meters for our test there. And then for the test in the summer, when I was talking to Kevin, who said it's about 80 kilometers away, we were running one of my little Zygu radios. It was the 5100, the 5105, and it's a little QRP rig, so it's a low power rig. But I did have it hooked up to an amplifier, so we were pushing about 100 watts with it as well. But that was with the end-fed antenna just hung up in a tree at about 10 feet and then run horizontally. So
it would also be really interesting to set up sort of as an experiment. If I'm set up with my antenna here, 10-ish feet off the ground, a little bit of sag to it, not terribly precise, and I am broadcasting very vertically, whether you're going to be able to hear that from your much higher antenna, but if you broadcast, it's going out at an angle, skip zone over me, and I wouldn't be able to hear you. Like it'd be, again, some of the finesse of antennaing.
Yeah, that's the fun part with antennaing, is you can model it all day long. It really depends on the day and what it decides to do. But yeah, for us, I wasn't really sure if it was going to work or not, with mine being about 30 feet up and yours being 10, but it worked. It worked quite well. Who knows? If we were to try it today, it might not. It might have just been an ionosphere thing, that it was just playing nice for us that day. But that's where testing comes in, right? To see kind of how things go and how well it works.
And what do you use for your mobile or your portable HF rig?
Yes,
I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole of HF radios now.
No, it's all good.
Thanks,
My
guys.
portable setup usually turns into I've got a couple of Zygu radios that I run. So I've got the 5105 and the 6100, and then going to be testing out the G90 here shortly. I got some restock of those coming, so I'm going to play around with that. But they are little portable radios. They're not overly big, and they're all self-contained. So they've got a battery pack in them. They have an antenna tuner. I can literally just take them and plop them down wherever and throw a little antenna on them, and they are good to go. The 5100, actually, yeah, the 6100 and the 5100, both without anything added to them, are just 5-watt little rigs. Surprisingly, 5 watts will do a lot for you. So everybody kind of thinks, oh, 5 watts, you won't get anything. I have made some pretty decent contacts out of just 5 watts. The 6100, you can add a little battery, external battery to it. It'll jump up to 10. And then the G90 on battery starts at 20 watts, and that's where it hangs out. So they're nice little rigs. And I like them. They're portable and easy to kind of get around. So that's my my setup for portable. And then I use the NFET antenna just because I've got it set up for portable. I've got it set on a spike, and it's literally just take an arborist bag, throw it over a tree limb, pull the rope over the tree limb with the other end of the antenna, and you're on the air within a couple of minutes. So it's a nice little setup. We've got a question in the live chat here from Patrick in regards to a normal dipole's directional front and back. With a dipole set up at 10 feet in an NVIS setup, does it remain directional or mostly just straight up? So my understanding is at that point, when you're at the 10 feet, it's straight up. It literally tries to bounce the signal right off the ground and right straight up. You're, of course, going to get some that still goes off on the direction. You're never going to stop that. But the idea is to bounce it right off the ground and then just bounce it right back down on that tight pattern like Scott was talking about earlier to get the signal closer into people and avoid that skip zone. Let's see. And then Rio, we've got another question. Does bending the antenna affect it? I was thinking possibly installing a ladder rack on my truck and outlining it with an NFET antenna. Also, how would being that close to a vehicle affect the signal? Loaded question. So
Does it antenna?
Does it antenna? My answer to that right off the hop is try it. See what happens. There are so many different things that can affect your antenna on a vehicle. First off, using the ladder rack, if that's going to be metal, you're going to have a heck of a time with that antenna.
You just turn the ladder rack into an antenna.
Yeah, you just turn it into yeah. So that's going to be tricky. Running mag mount antennas on my truck for HF operations when I'm at the parks. Yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't play nicely. You get into bonding and grounding and all those fun things that hams like to fight about when you start talking about doing antennas on vehicles. So my best answer to you, Rio, is try it. You're going to find out if your vehicle antennas or just your antennas or everything antennas, and you're going to know real quick if your truck antennas or your vehicle antennas, because all kinds of other things will also be going click and clack and turning on and off, and you don't expect them to. So, yeah, try it and see what happens. Can't hurt. I'd be curious to know if you do try it too, what happens with it, and if it does work out for you. But that's half the fun with this, is kind of testing things out to see what they do and what they don't do, and if it does do what you want or not.
What advice do you have for people, Eric, in terms of you want to test your setup, and it's going to be a whole lot easier to do when other hams are on the air? So in terms of looking at local ham clubs, looking at national events, certain days of the week when more people are out doing parks on the air, that sort of thing. What advice do you have for people? Because it's great that you have this setup, but you can't really test your sort of bent truck antenna if other people aren't on the air to answer back. Great question.
So you can just start yelling into the ether and hope that somebody comes back to you. They may or may not. You never know. Nothing more frustrating than sitting for an hour in front of a radio calling CQ, which is, I want to talk to somebody, and hearing nothing, because now you start asking yourself, is anybody hearing me? Is my radio working right? Am I actually putting a signal out? Did I set things up properly? We're actually talking, myself and Kevin from local prepper group here are looking at setting up an HF net where we set a certain date and time for people and say, okay, at this date and time, we're going to be on the following frequency. Let's try to make contact. And we want to kind of start it out with a local thing, so NVIS, and then if that takes off, we might spread it out a little bit differently and do like an NVIS one and do a more distance one. But we're looking at doing NVIS. So if this is something that interests you and you want to test it out before we get that off the ground, by all means, shoot me a message on the Discord, flip me an email. I know Scott would probably be willing to hop into. Let us know. We'll just set up for you one day and we'll make it happen. There's no better way to test than knowing that somebody else is going to be on the other end. because it's like I said, it's pretty frustrating just yelling into the ether, hoping that somebody's going to come back to you. But don't be afraid to ask, and like I said, we'll find a day. We'll all set up. I'll find whoever I can to help test out, and we'll just we'll dial it in and we'll figure it out. Because we've got wonderful things like the internet and cell phones and easy ways to communicate with each other. We may as well take advantage of it, because if it's not working, it's a quick text message or phone call to say, hey, try this, hey, try that, and then try it again on the rig and see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, at the same time, right, you're gonna want to test that.
Yep.
I mean, going back to all those times where people were online compared to if those don't coincide with your schedule, trying to make that happen to see if it works. And then, when a scenario happens where everybody is depending on the system, everybody is going to be sitting by their ham radio.
Yep.
In comparison to, at work, you work nights compared to other people, or just, whatever those scenarios are where, people may not be actually on, but doing that is, I mean, but when that time comes, you just know everybody's going to have that turned on somewhere and be listening. And, so yeah.
Yep. And Darius has a good point in the live chat as well. Radio Amateurs of Canada has a Discord channel as well. So you can post in there. People will certainly jump on. Ham Radio Crash Course also has a pretty active, actually very active Discord channel. And there's people on there 24/7 that are willing to jump in and help you out as well. We're hoping to get Josh back on the show here to nerd out about ham radio as well. And in the future here, we're looking at doing a series on communications. So don't be afraid to hop into those various areas as well, and just ask for help. No harm in saying, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. I want to learn how to do it. And like I said, the panelists here are willing to help people out as well. More than happy to set up one day and do a test with you and see if you can hear us, because why not try to sort it out while times are good? Touching back on the London test, because that was kind of the nice eye-opening test, because I really haven't been able to see NVIS in that wide of a usage scenario before. Like I said, I've done some tests with Scott, I've done some tests with Kevin, but the London test was, like Scott was saying, just fantastic to sit and listen after I had done my check-in with net control. Just to sit back and say, okay, where am I hearing? Who am I hearing? The furthest station that I heard while I was listening in was from Sault Ste. Marie, and that's about 570 kilometers away from my location. So that's not as the crow flies, that's driving, but that's a pretty good distance, considering it's a wire in my backyard and an HF rig sitting here in my office. So quite impressive.
So the way that the London test was set up, the net controller is sitting at their radio. They, sort of introduce themselves over the frequency, let people know what's going on, and then call QRZ, and everyone goes and calls their call signs.
That is called a pile up. Yep.
And that's an excellent description. And whatever, there's a little bit that the host can pick out, like someone had a call sign ending in Zulu, and then everyone else shuts up, and oh yeah, this is VE3 Zulu, and they report their location, sort of their signal strength, and that sort of thing, and it goes back and forth for a minute or two, and then the host says thank you and says QRZ again, and there's another pile up, and they just sort of pick out whatever call sign they could make out from the pile up. Yep. But it was really fun listening to, because I know where I am, everyone else is reporting where they are, and you're just kind of filling this mental map of all these different areas that you're talking to. And it's fantastic when I'm like, okay, hey, that one's probably 100 kilometers from me. That's kind of cool. Oh, that one, that one's, like I said, my parents' hometown. Awesome. And it just kind of carried on for a while like that. And everyone eventually gets to introduce themselves, gets ticked off. And I believe the London Amateur Radio Club was going to do a report and sort of list all of these contacts. And it's fascinating, because you're listening to the two of them talking and like, oh, I'm not hearing you so great. But some of the other people checking in, like I swear they could have been sitting in the room with me. It was so loud, clear. It was just beautiful. So it's anyway, it was just wonderfully educational in terms of my thoughts and applications. That if there's a disaster, I want to be able to talk to the 1 and 2 towns over. I don't need to talk to Australia
unless they're sending a balloon our way. Sorry, I had to get that in there. But it is a neat mode of communication. It's not something that is very widely used right now, at least that I've seen. Even like the London Club was mentioning in all their advertisements, it's something that isn't widely used currently. They wanted to do a test to kind of see how it can work and how it can be put to use. It was awesome to hear, like Scott was explaining, the pileups there. Just the number of people that were hopping in to check in with that control. The one thing to keep in mind, just because I'm hearing a station in Sault Ste. Marie doesn't mean they can hear me. So that would be kind of part of our test that we're trying to figure out with doing a little prepper net, is we would be able to check in with that Sault Ste. Marie station, say, okay, you can hear me. Now, Sault Ste. Marie station, I want you to call Scott. And then Scott, you call the Sault Ste. Marie station. Okay, now you call Jeff. Jeff, you call the Sault Ste. Marie station. And then we can verify that everybody can hear each other and talk to each other. So both send and receive. So that's kind of what we want to do with this this prepper net idea, is who can you talk to, who can talk to you, and kind of establish distances that we can get, and just get like a standard set time that we all hop on and just chat, because why not? Get you using your radio, get you familiar with it, get you familiar with setting up your antenna. If something doesn't work right that day, we can work all together and try to get it fixed for you. So get you some troubleshooting experience as well. And just gets us all talking, because right now we're just some talking heads and, on a podcast or on YouTube that you're listening to. So if we can kind of chat on the radio back and forth and kind of help each other get their comms up and going, I think it's a great idea, and it'll be a lot of fun too.
And I guess if you can't get to the specific town you're talking about, but you can piggyback to someone, and then they can reach that town, right? You can use use a relay, use a middle person to get all the info. It'd be nice to know before everything.
Yeah, it'd be really good to know. Yeah. And then we can set up communication standards too, right? Like on this day, we're going to be using, and actually London Amateur Club did this as well, where they said, okay, here's our primary frequency, our secondary, and then our third frequency. So if you don't hear us on the first, go to the second. You don't hear us on the second, go to the third. And it actually worked out well, because the first, there was I think there was some kind of contest or contact that was going on there. The second, same thing, was already being used. We ended up actually using the third frequency at first, just because the bands are busy. So it's kind of nice to have that kind of plan in setup as well. So we know that if I don't hear you on 1, I'll go to 2. I don't hear you on 2, I'll go to 3. If you want to see a good setup as well for doing communications on radio, Tech Prepper on YouTube, fantastic setup. He does a lot of ham radio operations out in the field, and he has a whole comms system set up where they will transmit for X amount of time on one frequency, then they'll drop down X number of kilohertz, they'll transmit there for a certain amount of time, then they'll go down again. And he tries to make contact with a certain station. He calls it No Random Contact series. It's a good series to kind of keep an eye on and watch as well, because he's got a whole comm plan set up, and it's kind of good to have in the back of your mind, or even deploy yourself if you're going to do this for an emergency situation. So it's neat to see. Any other NVIS questions, comments, or anything like that, panelists or live viewers?
I just find it kind of useless. I mean, we all have cell phones. I don't see why you want to do that.
Cool. Thanks for coming out here. It's been fun knowing you.
No, but I mean, it's kind of cool. Like if, Scott had mentioned that this was a big thing for him. So like, if he's testing it out and realizing he can't get to, set of friends, family, whatever in town, but he can communicate with someone that can relay the info, most people that probably do the ham thing are mostly all preppers, but just being like, hey, write this frequency down. This worked for us. Let's say a scenario happens, we'll do check-ins at, 9 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then, if that person is due to, just, it is pretty cool. It is on my to-do list in the last little bit, and like the more you guys are talking about it, I'm like, man, I kind of got to do this, but I'm like, I got to do it, but there's just so much, and
It's
no. So it is just cool. It's kind of cool to hear how all this works without actually getting into the course. So
great question from Patrick in regards to, does time of the day or band make a big difference? Yes, yes, and yes. So when we were doing our test back in the summer, Jeff was here and we were trying to make contact with Kevin in Alliston. There was one day it wasn't happening. We could hear stations in the US, we could hear stations all over the place. We were not hearing Kevin at all. He was not hearing us. It just wasn't going to happen. At least the beer was cold. That was good. A couple days later, we tried it. Boom, crystal clear. We could hear him, no issue at all. Turns out there was a bit of a solar storm the first day we were trying, and it was just killing our transmission. He wasn't hearing us. I tried to check in with some other stations as well. We just weren't going anywhere. So yeah, weather for sure. Time of day also will affect you. Like 20 meters at night, you're just not gonna. It's not going to happen. You're going to want to do 40 meters at that point. 40 meters throughout the day and night, most likely you're going to be all right. You might want to try 20 meters during the day. You'll probably have a little bit better success that way. But yeah, absolutely. Time of day, band make a huge difference. And that's kind of part of your testing too, to kind of get a feel for what's going to work well for you at certain times of the day. That's the joy of HF. You're kind of at the mercy of Mother Nature and the sun. So sometimes they like you, sometimes they hate you. It all depends on how your RF, it's your radio frequency. When I say RF, how it goes and how it bounces off the ionosphere. So that's another thing to keep in mind too. In an emergency situation, you might have to try for a day or two if Mother Nature and the sun's just not playing nice for you. That's where your plan gets into place, right? So I'm going to be on this frequency for X amount of time, then this one, then I'm going to stop for a half hour, an hour, then I'm going to do this, and this. Having that in place and having people you're trying to talk to know that that's what you're going to do kind of increases your chance of making that contact. But don't get frustrated if it doesn't happen the first time around. Chances are it won't. We really lucked out, myself and Scott, with it working pretty much right off the hop. But I have had it where it's failed and we haven't been able to make contact for an entire day, and we had to try again.
I mean, going back to your point, Pierre, earlier, years ago, I'd bought just a used sat phone at auction, sort of looking at getting into comms, and it's just not a practical solution. I mean, it's sort of dependent on so many other things and subscriptions and whatnot. So this is just such a nice, ideal, I need my gear here, Eric needs his gear there, we need a little bit of luck, but we're not dependent on something, some equipment outside of our control other than the ionosphere.
Yep.
No, I mean, it's kind of cool. Like now I'm intrigued where I'm like, I want to get this rig and then see if I can communicate with you guys. But like, it's another rabbit hole I can go down on my own time, I guess.
So Melissa in the live chat there's got a good question as well. Is there anything you can buy to help you break through that bad weather?
A really
Amplifiers. A cell phone, yeah.
TikTok.
TikTok, yeah, there you go. Weather balloons? Yeah, no. No, yeah. So an amplifier will help you with that. It's not going to be the be all save all. It can kind of help get your signal a little bit more, but if it's not bouncing off the ionosphere and it's just going right out into space, you're just talking to whoever's sending the weather balloons, I suppose, at that point. So yeah, a lot of it is really just dependent on where that signal is going and if it's bouncing back down nicely or not. If they're just not hearing you, but like the ionospheric setup is good and your signal is bouncing the way it should be, an amplifier will help boost your signal up, or at least your audio up, so they can hear you. But it's again the kind of I hate giving the maybe answers, but a lot of the stuff with ham radio is it might work, might not. It all really depends on your setup of the day and Mother Nature playing nicely with you. Right. Any other questions from the panel or the live chat? We've had some really good ones tonight.
Nothing I will ask while this is recording or live.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Like I said, we want to do a little series on communication. So this was kind of the start, because we just had played around with NVIS. Seems to be a popular thing right now. So we want to kind of talk about it a little bit. We will probably cycle back to it again. If anybody is interested in testing out, if you're already licensed and you want to test out an NVIS system, please do reach out on Discord, flip an email into feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. I will gladly either find somebody to test with you if I'm not around at the time, or put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. Or if I am around, I will just set my system up and we'll do our best to make it happen. I'm always happy to nerd out and play radio anytime. So if you give me an excuse, I'm even happier. So I did put the link in the live chat here to the Discord. So if you want to hop in there, it's probably the easiest way. There is a channel off on the left side there specifically for ham radio. So if you throw a message in there, you will most likely get somebody that's willing to jump on and help you out. And I'll be posting information in there as well about doing our prepper net that we want to try to get set up and actually running. So pay attention in there, and we'll mention it as well in future podcasts. But like I said, we're going to be trying to talk a little bit more about ham radio and communication in the upcoming episodes. So stay tuned for that. But with that, shall we move into the podcast challenge?
So, take what you've considered, read about some ham radio ideas like NVIS, and see if there's something that you want to learn more about that would be an appropriate addition to your preps. We all love learning things. These are neat things to learn about. Are they something that you think would be useful?
Awesome. All right. Upcoming events. The annual Prepper Meet is happening again this year in Desborough, Ontario. I will have to double check on the dates and such, but I have seen posts saying that it is happening. So we'll get that information to you as soon as we've got it available. We've got a weather blurb from Jeff.
So between the time that I wrote this weather blurb, which was Saturday morning, and now things have changed a little bit, but not shocking. I'll give you the information I've got anyway. So we're looking at the potential for a severe weather outbreak on Thursday, the 16th. It is still several days away. I'm just making everybody aware. This could be a long range, well, not long range, but long effect storm that basically the low pressure system will be somewhere in the northern U.S., southern Michigan, Ohio, and the tail of it is going to go down from Ohio, down the whole Ohio River Valley, Mississippi River Valley, down into the deep south, you into Alabama and that kind of stuff. I'll keep an eye on it. I'll do the updates on the Discord. There is a section there for general weather. I usually keep things up there as soon as the forecast becomes a bit more clearer. Things aren't looking quite as bad now as they were then, but there's still the potential for that to change. We're 4 days away. So, considering that Southern Ontario is expecting double-digit temperatures Wednesday, Thursday. Remember, we're in the middle of February, and we're talking 12, 13, 14-degree temperatures in Southern Ontario. So high dew points. So all of the ingredients are there for some sort of a severe weather system to form. So just keep that in mind if you're anywhere in that area, and we'll go from there. Again, like I said, I'll post updates on the Discord when I can tie it down a little bit more firm.
All right. For the annual Preppers Meet, just double checked. So the official dates are July the 6th to the 9th. And again, that's at Desborough, Ontario. So once they end up with making tickets available and such, we will let everybody know. All right, we got a deal of the week.
So around the world, there's approximately 900 weather balloons launched twice a day. Buy in bulk, you can get a great deal on used weather balloons right now.
Oh boy. Terrible advice, but funny too. All
Or
right, we got,
yourself some rope so you can set up your NVIS antenna.
you know what? Do both. Just
There you go.
go all out. You know, attach your NVIS antenna to your weather balloon. See how high you can go and still make contact.
Perfect.
I was actually just thinking about that. Like, if I had like a small helium tank and a big heavy balloon, could I string my antenna up literally anywhere and just get on the air?
I guess your only limit there is the length of your coax.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was
Be
a
a lot of
thought.
loss if you're going up 30, 40 feet or 30, 40,000 feet. But I say
Maybe you
test
can
it.
communicate with the pilot at that point.
Maybe.
Just long enough to say stop, don't shoot. And
Yes, we come in peace. Yeah. Okay, we got some shout outs, I see.
I want to shout out you, Eric. Thank you for helping me tune in my NVIS setup. It's incredibly cool. I think it's such a great thing, and I very much appreciate the help.
No problem.
I want to shout out my mag buddy who was helping me with the vacuum sealer, and sort of some of the new friends that I made this week. So I think it's been a great week for shout outs.
Nice. Awesome. Well, with email and iTunes reviews, it was beyond getting a couple of spam emails about us having voicemail and such, which is not a thing. You got to get a little bit sharper with the emails if you're going to trick us into clicking links.
I
Nothing.
listened to the episode.
Yes, that's right.
I know better.
Do you know who you're emailing? Come on. We need to get a little bit better than that one. With that, I'll bring episode number 195 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, of course, your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Submit a review. It does help other people find us.
And we do record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. Go back a few episodes, you can hear me live express my displeasure with how we do record. If you want an early peek at the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast. Click the notifications tab; it gives you an alert when we're going live. You can contact me at Alan, that's with 1L, at prepperpodcast.ca. Please don't send me any voicemails; I will not open it.
I'm just impressed that StreamYard specifically made a change because of your rage quit.
I'm an influencer.
It's fantastic. You
You're
know,
famous.
locally record things and then stream it afterwards.
And if anybody wants to reach me, you can send a message to feedback@prepperpodcast.ca, or I am frequently on the Discord.
Feedback at prepperpodcast.ca also works for Scott, or maybe I'll be on the HF bands. We'll see.
There you go.
Off the wall customizing on most socialist media's platforms. I'm not on the Discord often, but if you need to, you can probably find me there, or you can find me on Monday nights on YouTubes for the other CPP, as well as their platform that they use. That whatever, but yeah, where I get more in depth on my critiques of the government.
All right. You can check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. Get me there on the live chat. You can also reach me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca or potentially NVIS on 40 meters. Thanks for joining us this evening. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
And keep learning.